And our Hispanic population is coming in at 40.37%, which is the most of our peer groups. The African American population, we have the second smallest in our peer groups. White settlements is the only one that's smaller than us. So this is how our district ethnicity with our various cohorts in our peer groups is. Another area that we can look at with enrollment is our breakdown for our different programs. Thank you for your patience. The only way to drive this is live web-based because the data is live. And so as you look at Little Elm's right here, so you can see our trend for our bilingual program in the light blue. Here is our trend for our LEP students, our limited English proficient. Our trend for our at-risk students is in the turquoise, and our trend for economic disadvantage is here in the orange. And you can see how our cohort groups, this is Brenham's, is trending over the past 8 years, Crosby, Huntsville, and White Settlement. We can also look at finances, and I find this very interesting, as I know that Mr. Anderson does. So this is our comparison with our neighbors. This is actual per student, how we spend our money, and then this is the percent of that actual. And so what does this mean? Well, the orange is the instructional and instructional related services. Our green is instructional and school leadership. So that'd be our campus-based. The red is our support services. So that would be our anyone that works at the campus level is supporting students. The purple is central office support services. Then the brown is support services non-student based. So that would be maintenance, grounds, etc. The pink is debt service, and the gray is capital outlay. So when you look at our neighbors, we are right here, and you can see that instructionally per student, we are right there with how our neighbors are performing. Frisco actually spends lower on instructional materials than we do. But then when you look over at that percent that we spend, we are actually at the top of our neighboring groups. When you look at our peer group, the 4 groups that I introduced you to a little bit ago, you can see a big difference here with Crosby ISD. They have a really, really large capital outlay compared to the rest of the districts. Other than that, here we are right here. We're very similar to our districts with our instructional expenditures and our student campus leadership, our support services, and also the amount that we spend on our administration here at Zellers. If you look at the percentages, we are 3rd in percentages for instructional out of our total per student. Then our leadership, campus-based leadership, and then our support services. Here is our administrative, and then our capital, our debt service, and our capital outlay. And so I feel very comfortable with how we are performing against our peer groups in our finances as well. Another way that we can look at it is on our staffing. And so what is our average salary staffing against how our cohorts are doing, our most comparable school districts? So these are our neighbors, and here is Little Elm. And then if we go with our peer groups, here is Little Elm ISD here. So our average salary right now is $53,745. And if I take some of these years out, we will be able to have a better view with all of them together. So here is Little Elm ISD here. And then these are our number of FTEs that we have in comparison to our other comparable groups. Another area that we can look at for staffing is our teacher turnover. So when we look at our teacher turnover, ISD is gray. So here's our teacher turnover rate, and we are the lowest in our comparable group at 15.6%. White settlement, 16.8%. So they're a full percentage above where we are. And this is one that you want to be low. Brenham ISD is 18.4, Crosby is 18.7, and Huntsville has a 27.2% turnover rate. So as we move on and look at other areas, we can also look at our ACT and SAT performances, as well as our, next I'll show you our AP. So when I look at our peer group, and this is the average ACT score for all subjects, and we're kind of bunched together here. We are coming in second at the bottom here, but we're tied with Huntsville and White Settlement. And then we have Crosby ISD and Brenham ISD. If I choose the SAT scores, we're kind of all bunched up here again at the here, and then with Brenham ISD coming in once again at the top. If I look at the percent tested on the SAT and the ACT, we actually test percentage-wise in third place. And I would imagine that that's going to go up drastically. The other thing is that this is based on 2015, 2016, because it's always 2 years in arrears. Remember that this year we did the SAT and the school day. So 2 years from now, when I do this report, we should see a huge uptick there because we tested all students at the high school that were in the junior class. And then the last that I would like to show you this evening is our AP results. And once again, these are 2 years in arrears. So with our peer group, when we look at our AP results, we are trending up above criterion, where we are seeing the other districts trending down. And so I'm really, really pleased about our upward swing, because you can see our comparable districts, they did not have such a good year the past few years as they in their AP scores, where we show a steady increase over the past 4 years. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, actually, if you could go back to the initial slide, on the Peer Finder one.
Yes.
What is the difference between district total actual expense and district operating funds expense?
That's a really good question.
Okay.
And Grant, okay, so we'll have to get that back with you. This is a report that we, I don't look at that, sorry, and so I'm not sure what those terms mean.
I'm just curious because the operating funds, we hear that from Grant every single month, and I'm just, where the actual expense ends up being $32 million more than that number just kind of came out of nowhere, so.
And I'll have to ask, I'll actually send an email to 5Site and ask them what that is.
Okay.
Is this a site that the public has access to, or only the, okay.
No, it isn't. And actually, we pay for one license. So I'm it. And then it's not like the other program that I'm using, Infogram, where I can post that on the web. And so it's a tool that allows us to just do these live reports.
Thank you very much. I mean, we get these reports, these progress reports all the time, and there seems to be people in the community that feel that we only provide these progress reports during election season. But the fact is that we see them all along. I've been here for 4 years, and we see these progress reports every single year. So thank you very much for providing those.
You're welcome.
And we can look at a way, I don't know if it will work with the current system that we have online, but there may be a way to pull some of these reports that are significant that we want to share with the community. And we can find a way to, I'm speaking for you, Dr. Mika, I'm assuming we can find a way to maybe take a still of that, like a snapshot.
I can do a still image of it,
Yes.
but it only one shot at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you also maybe send us in your parameters that you went and picked the schools again, with the enrollment, the EL and low income? If you could give us those parameters again, what your selection criteria was. So again, some people think that we're just handpicking 4 districts that look worse than us.
And I'll tell you, and just to say what it was, I move a slide until I get a minimum of 5 in a comparable group.
Mhm.
And so it changes. It changed last year from this year because everyone's demographics changed. We grew. And
Yeah.
so last year, our pair groups were Azle, Granbury, Huntsville, and Hutto. And so we don't have anyone in our peer group that was our peer group last year. And it's because Huntsville, thank you. Huntsville is the only one. Thank you. So as I change and create the analytic with the peer finder, and I can just show you how that's done real quick so that everyone understands. It's not I don't predetermine. So every school district in the state of Texas is now populated. And I just start sliding this bar. I know we have about 7,000 students. So I wanted to see what we could pick up and how many we could narrow it down. So this is now from 5,000 to 216,000. Well, I know we don't want to go that high. So I just start sliding and I get down to see, okay, how many districts do I now have? But I know not only does size matter, but so does really our low income. We're at about 40-70%. So I thought that I would choose anything between 35% and 60%. And really that's how this is. It's not anything that I go into predetermining. I want to get us within, I want to be able to compare us to 4 to 5 different districts. And when I did then when I moved the button for our ELLs to see what I can pop up with, knowing that we're coming in at about 18%, that's really what narrows us down.
Yeah.
And so it's no magic. I don't go in with a preconceived number every year. I want to get us down as close as we can to comparable groups, and that's how I do it.
It was primarily enrollment, ELL, and low income. Were the 3
yes,
determining
those are
factors. Yeah, okay.
and that is one of the things that the state has always said that is a predetermining factor for how districts can perform is low SES and the number of LEP students. In fact, that's why those 2 groups count so much in our accountability system.
Okay, thank you.
And does this show every district in the state of Texas?
Yes, I can see every school district in the state of Texas.
How many is that?
School districts in the state of Texas?
1,700.
This also shows every charter school,
Okay.
including it's the independent school districts, the common school districts, the Texas juvenile justice system. So this actually shows more than what our independent school districts are.
So this has more than TEA even.
This does, everything runs through TEA. It's not everyone that's accountable though.
Gotcha. Okay.
So what drives the dashboards on our website is what
website? What data drives the dashboards on our website?
The data that drives the data on our website is our Texas Academic Performance Report that comes out in the late fall.
Yep.
And so I take that data and plug it in, and then I will keep the data there so we can see a growing trend across years. But it's static data from what the state reports how we did on STAR performance. So this year's TAPER report covered the 2017 STAR. I gave you that initial report, I believe, in July. I gave you an update in September, October, and then I gave you our final report in January, I believe. And then might be a month or two of those. And then it includes that STAR from 2017. It also includes our AP results from 2015 and our SAT and ACT results from 2015, as well as our staffing and per pupil expenditures. That's what's on the dashboard. It also includes our current enrollment data.
Now, Dr. Mecca, one thing on the data that you just showed, we can pull that in like static copies, almost like PDFs. And I'll visit with Dr. Mecca about how we can put that on the website, but it won't be live. It would be static. One thing we can do is we can send the board, and we can certainly, what we put in here tonight, put it in a PDF format, so that way you can actually see it. You can refer back to it. But again, the only drawback is we have the one license that Dr. Mecca uses, and I want to thank her, and she does a fabulous job mining this data and really pulling out information that we need to know so we can keep moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our board members, next, I would like to ask Grant Anderson, our CFO, to come up, and he'll introduce Derek Honey from RBC Capital.
Good evening, board, trustees, and Superintendent Gallagher. We do have Derek Honey here from RBC Capital. I appreciate all the work he's done in our bond sales, and he's going to go over the results of our first 2018 bond sale.
Good evening, Mr. Gallagher, board members. If you remember, I was here a couple months ago to get your preliminary approval to move forward with our plan of finance to sell your first tranche of your recent authorized bonds. You should have this presentation in front of you. Just wanted to hit a few highlights and kind of tell you how everything went. If you flip to the first tab on page 4, these were the parameters that you authorized us to move forward, which actually delegated the authority to Mr. Anderson to finalize everything. And there were 3 main parameters. One, that the maximum interest rate could not exceed 5%. We ended up at 3.95%, so over 1 point better. Maximum voted authorization to use. If you remember, I showed you a finance plan that said we would sell up to $147 million. That was our max. We actually came in with better interest rates, so we were able to maximize that up to the 150, which you authorized. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. And then the final maturity of August 15th, 2048, which is 30 years, which is right where we ended up. If you flip forward to page 5, got the financing team and the sources and uses of funds here. What happens is with my firm's oversight, we have an underwriting team that actually goes out, solicits orders from investors to buy the bonds, and based on the demand that we have, we adjust the interest rates to correspond to the demand for bonds. And you might ask why that on the right there, that's the cover page of what's called the official statement. That's the offering document used to solicit orders from investors. You might ask why it only has $135,160,000 on it. Well, what happens depending on that demand and the interest rates we set them at, the bonds are sold at a premium. So we actually generate about a $15 million of premium. So the district will actually receive the full $150 million for construction. If you flip forward one more page, these are the actual rates, interest rates and yields, meaning what the investor actually earns for each given maturity date of the bonds. And if you look out, say in 2042, the yield the investor is actually going to earn based on what they paid for those bonds was 3.14%. So you can imagine that's probably not something you want to put your own money in at 3% for a 25-year investment, but it's good when you're actually issuing the debt and you're having to pay that rate. So all in good rates there. Final page here on page 7. This is just a summary, updated tax rate impact analysis, which I mentioned. Again, we're going to generate $150 million in construction proceeds. A lot of numbers here, but if you work all the way over to the right, column S, you'll see based on that sale with an additional just under 74 million that today's assumption say we can issue in 2020 would keep you at the 47-cent tax rate. Now, what I talked about before and what I think will actually happen is we'll actually outgrow these growth assumptions here when you get your values. So my expectation is that we'll probably be able to sell the full 85 remaining million in that sale and not have to wait any further. But we're just gonna have to wait and see where your values come in when we get those. If I flip to the next section, this is really what I wanted to highlight tonight. And once we go through the bond issuance process, we go get credit ratings from independent rating agencies. In your case, we use Standard & Poor's and Fitch that investors require a rating when they buy the bond. So we go through that process with your finance staff to have conference calls, and they take a look at various factors, your outstanding debt, economic factors in the district, management, and sort of things are baked into a credit rating. And once we did that, we actually got both ratings affirmed at the AA- level. And I had some concern, which I had talked to Grant about going into the sale, that we were doubling the district's debt load. So that's a significant data point in your credit rating. And we worked hand in hand to get all the financial policies up to date, get all the financial modeling in place to show the rating agencies that you had a plan to be able to repay this debt and operate the new facilities to be able to maintain this credit rating. So I'll just highlight a few of their points. Again, S&P, some of the positive credit factors were the access to the DFW metro area, extremely strong wealth and strong income, very strong finances, evidenced by strong reserves. We'll talk more about in just a second. And then partly offsetting those strengths, which they see it as sort of a negative factor now, which I just mentioned, is the high debt burden with additional debt plans coming. And then Fitch pretty much echoed those comments. And the other thing I'll mention, if you remember, we also were able to sell the bonds with the state's permanent school fund guarantee with a rating of AAA. So that helped us achieve a low rate as well. I've included the actual reports from S&P and Fitch in here if you want to read these in your spare time. Again, they're a great independent look at the district's credit. And I won't read all this, but if you flip forward a couple of pages, I have highlighted a couple of areas. One of the strong positive credit factors were the very strong finances, evidenced by strong reserves. And again, they bake all these different areas, your economy, your finances, your debt load, to come up with an overall credit rating. And one of the main factors that S&P uses is called their financial management assessment. And they actually raised the financial management assessment this go around from standard to good. And I've highlighted kind of that summary there. And I'll just read a portion of it. The district has adopted a long-term financial plan that looks out 5 years, including the budget year. When forecasting revenue and expenditures, the plan incorporates tax-based growth and enrollment projections, possible Chapter 4 recapture, and any potential use of fund balance. And I want to brag on your finance staff because I work with a lot of districts around the state, and the financial model that they have, the 5-year plan that Grant's put together, I have not seen one that in depth. And the rating analyst actually commented on it that he was surprised to see it. He doesn't see it normally with school districts, and I think it was a big help to keeping us at this level, the credit rating level. And then finally here, the last point there I highlighted, formal reserve policy states a minimum of 24% expenditures, a level the district continues to exceed. And although you do exceed your adopted local standard, I think having the fund balance that you had really helped us maintaining. So I would recommend that you keep that going forward, knowing that we're going to have additional debt plans in a couple of years. And you look forward just a few more pages to the first page of the Fitch report. And kind of like I mentioned on the S&P report, you'll see there they have key rating drivers. One is the revenue framework. What kind of revenues do you have to support the debt? Expenditure framework, obviously your costs to run the district. Long-term liability burden. I should say revenue framework was an A rating. expenditure was a AA, long-term liability burden was an A, and you can see again, operating performance was the highest of all four at a AAA. So that really, those ratings are, individual components are sort of blended to come up with the overall rating of AA. So you can see if operating performance were to go lower, then that could drop us down into the A category. So again, very solid financial performance really helped us here. And we should be in good shape moving to the next sale in a couple years. So that's my formal remarks. I'm happy to take any questions. We don't need any action. We already have all this finalized. We're just waiting on closing, which should occur May 15th.
I just want to thank you. This is better than what I thought we could do. So it's fantastic. Thank you very
You
much.
bet. I actually did miss one point on the tax rate impact page. This was actually my main point. I didn't even say it. The final Series 2018 debt service was about $8.3 million lower than what was presented to the board a couple of months ago. And that was not inclusive of the $3 million that we added. So really we're more than $11 million better than where we were a couple of months ago.
I think even more.
Excellent.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
All right. Anything else? Okay, perfect. Well, then at this time what's the official time? 7:33. At 7:33, the board will recess into closed door meetings as permitted by the Texas Open Meetings Act, subchapter 551.072 and 551.074. The board and the superintendent will discuss personnel and land. Thank you.
Don't forget that.
back to order 8:44.
Yes.
All right, perfect. So we have discuss and approve the financial reports. Grant?
Good evening. You have in your board packets the financial reports and the presentation this time. And this is for the February 2018 financials. The budget amendments include all amendments through April 2018. And the major budget amendments, there's one for child nutrition, about $70,000 for repair maintenance costs, food purchases and contracted services. That's again out of our child nutrition fund. This is the fund balance analysis that we go over every month, the 2017 initial budget. And the change, or it was a balanced budget. I'm sorry, it's looking a little bit different on the screen tonight, but our current budget is our current fund balance is $26.2 million, and the proposed budget amendments do not impact our fund balance, and we still have a $1.5 million deficit. And this is our initial budget for the beginning of the year was $66.5 million. Our estimated revenue and our proposed amendments is adding another $54,000 in estimated revenue. So we have $66.78 million estimated revenue. And our campus functions at the campus level, our appropriations, 76% of our budget. And again, we had a balanced budget in our September 1 initial budget of $66.5 million. And with the approved budget amendments tonight, we'll be at $68.3 million in appropriations with zero impact on the budget and still at $1.5 million deficit. In our general fund budget to actual summary, our total revenue, we received about 85% of our estimated budget and 53% of our expenditures to date. So we have revenue over expenditures about $20 million. That just means that we've collected the majority of our tax collections, of course. And our cash flow beginning was $67.8 million. And we spent our ending cash balance is $66.8 million with $1 million in disbursement. And our two capital projects we have is the high school expansion at $21.5 million. We have about $1.1 million remaining in that budget. And our transportation operation facility at $7 million. And again, that'll be adjusted when we get our GMP. We have accumulated expenditures to date about $728,000. And these are the remainder of the board financials that are in your packet. And the administration recommends approval of the February 2018 financial reports as presented.
So is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, all those, is there any discussion?
Yeah, Grant, I did have one question. On the high school expansion, the project balance, 1.1 million, do we have any more invoices coming in that's going to cover that whole 1 million? Or are we actually going to have that spare?
Yeah, we're estimating about about $600,000 remaining in that
Okay.
budget after it's completed.
Okay, so we still have a few more bills coming in.
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's all I have.
All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, so now going on to discuss the expenditures over $50,000 summary.
Yes, and the two expenditures over 50,000 are technology. And I was going to ask Clay to come up and discuss those two items with you.
Good evening. Before you, we have two expenditures over $50,000. The first one is a firewall for a bandwidth upgrade. Currently, we have a 1 gig connection And Region 11 has a project that is giving 10 gigs to all districts. And so to be able to take advantage of that, we'll have to upgrade our firewall. So that's what that cost is. That's the $170,142 upfront cost, and then an annual renewal, excuse me, of $75,000. The second project is to connect the stadium to our network. Currently, the stadium is on its own little island and a very unreliable connection. So we're going to run fiber from Chavez to the stadium through the field house. And on the way, we'll go ahead and Wi-Fi the field house, Wi-Fi the press box, all levels of the press box, the main concourse area. And then as an optional project, which I think we're going to go ahead and do, is we'll put Wi-Fi over on the visitor side in the course area. This will not be the seating area. This will just be underneath the press box itself and then up in the actual levels. One of the primary reasons we're trying to do this, we need to shoot a point-to-point to our temporary transportation facility. Since we're setting portables for the temporary facility, rather than trying to run fiber to those, we can shoot a point-to-point since the stadium is the highest point in the district. I've already had a company out here to look at that. They said it'd work on that for about a 20 to 30 foot pole out on the transportation facility. So that's a good inexpensive way to get us a connection. And then once the permanent building is built, we can run our normal circuit in. So, but the side effect is that we do get connected at the stadium. So.
The Booster Club will be having.
As long as the Wi-Fi works inside those cinder block structures.
We haven't done a full assessment. It should be able to leak into in the concession areas, once the doors are raised. Obviously, the metal doors down, it's not, but it should be able to leak in there.
Okay.
So, yeah. So.
All right.
Great, thank you.
So the administration recommends approval of the $50,000 expenditures as submitted.
Their motion to approve the $50,000 summary report. Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Only question I have, Clay, real quick, on the firewall. Is that hardware and software or just the hardware?
That's both.
Both?
And
So the renewal, 75,000 renewal is basically going to be the software licenses?
it'll be subscriptions
Okay.
to the threat protection and as well as support on the hardware.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right. Motion passes. Thank you very much. And now, Rick, discuss and approve the construction manager RFQ results, rankings, and recommendation. Mr. Martin.
Good evening, trustees, Superintendent Gallagher. As you know, we did put out an RFQ, kind of run you through the timelines happened. February 28th, we issued our first ad for the RFQ for CMR. March 7th, we issued the second ad. March 8th, we held pre-submission meetings here in this room. March 19th, we posted an addendum which answered questions that came up in that meeting. March 21st, received the RFQ responses. The 22nd, they were evaluated. The 23rd, we notified all 4 of the respondents. We had 4 firms to respond. We made the decision that we would interview all 4 rather than try to eliminate anybody at that point. March 30th and April 2nd, an additional references and information on the groups. April 3rd, we finalized the rank, and I think you'll see attached the information that we have that we presented of who we're recommending and what those rankings are. April 5th, we forwarded the rankings and recommendations that you have in front of you. And it's our request that you would authorize us to continue the process with the 3 that have been listed. Those being Balfour Beatty, Cadence McShane, and Jackson Construction. And these would be for use throughout the bond program. We feel like we've got a good mix. We have a large, extra large contracting firm, management firm, as well as a good medium size and good small. They all have very good references and come highly recommended. We'll come back next month to next month's meeting and ask you for specific, and we'll make recommendations of which ones to use on which project.
So is there a motion to approve the list of these three contractors as presented by Mr. Martin?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions? I did just have a general question, just in the 98 next to Beatty, 96, McShane, and 82, that's the ranking result based on what you put into your.
Yes, in
your
RFQ,
analytical
there
tool?
was qualifications and how you would be able to score them based on how they achieved it. It's all in the RFQ. And then we sat and we scored each one separately in each of these 8 different items and then tallied the scores. And that's where these numbers came from.
So then was the fourth just a sharper drop off even than 96 to 82, and that's why we cut it 3? Or did we always want 3?
Actually, the fourth group, the fourth firm scored higher than the number 3 on this list, but we received some negative information from another ISD adjacent to us. So we rather than try to fight that battle, we'd go with the ones that had the clean slate.
Okay. All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion
Thank you.
passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. All right. Guess, is there a motion to pass the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Nope. All right, motion passes. Thank you. All right, so now, Ms. Epps, you can present the student handbook.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Board of Trustees. The handbook, I'm hoping is attached to your board book for your review. And so it gives you a chance to look it over. As per board policy, it is not a document that needs approval, but has been provided for you to have an opportunity to look it over and provide any information back as you see fit. The main change in the handbook from previous years is that the elementary and the secondary were previously separate handbooks, and now they're condensed into one community, one pack handbook for elementary through secondary with specific designations as you go through the handbook as to which applies to which level. Any questions, you can let me know, and I'll be glad to get back with you on them. Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much, Ms. Epps. All right, well, is there any board comments? I guess we'll start over here on Mr. English. Ooh. Where to begin? Where to
Yeah,
begin?
no, I was looking at 2 things at one time.
3 minutes.
Dr. Gallagher, want to know when we'd get information from the Education Foundation. I know the audit's supposed to be going and they're supposed to present that. Do we know when that's going to come to the board or?
I don't have an actual date yet. I did reach out to Mrs. Amy Hillock, President of the Education Foundation, to ask her about the audit. The response I got, and we also at the last Education Foundation meeting, they were talking about the audit being wrapped up and finishing. The response I got in the email, audit was completed with the exception there are some comments that the foundation has made to the auditor, and they're waiting on a final version, a final copy. So as soon as I get that, I will share that with the board and get that information to the board.
Yeah, because I thought that was supposed to be in March. You're supposed to present that, was it March or April?
Originally, it was February, but we allowed them some extension just because of the tax season and
Okay.
give them some extra time to get that completed.
Yes, okay. Sounds good. Other than that, this conference, great job tonight. Really appreciate the things you guys are doing. Keep it up. The numbers are looking good. Thank you for presenting the numbers. Hopefully we can get that out to the community so people are aware. But around the district, there's some really good things and really appreciate some of the things the kids are doing as well. So thank you.
Mr. Flores? Mr. Olson?
None, I think.
What?
I think there's nothing I can think of, so we're going to slide. We're going to go and go.
All right, Ms. Harding?
I'm good. Thank you, guys.
Dan?
When they're Mr., I'm Dan, okay.
Sorry.
Or are you
Mr. Dan.
No, again, I just want to thank all staff again for having everything for us tonight. A lot of the information is very helpful. Sorry that Dika left already, but I really liked a lot of her information she had. There are a couple of things that I had just want to make the rest of the board aware of. A couple ideas that I had sent to President Myers, and she's going to share with Superintendent Gallagher, see if we can start doing. One of the items that I would like to see added to the agenda, and just we're going to, I think, discuss it at our next meeting, is, and I'd already asked Superintendent Gallagher about this also. I'd like to see having a section added at the end of the agenda for future items, things that we know are going to be coming up next 30, 60, 90 days that are going to be very large data items that normally take us a very long time to discuss here. If we could get that information then along with that data, so we would then have the 30 or 60 days to digest that, and then hopefully get all of our questions answered prior to the meeting, rather than coming in here, having an hour presentation and another hour discussion regarding it. So it just allows us some more time to, again, digest all the information and have all of our questions answered and everything beforehand. Another thing I'd also asked Superintendent Gallagher about is on the agenda, I would like to see, and again, something that we could discuss during our workshop, is I would also like to see if we could move the number one top item on the agenda, move that to the very first thing. Let's do that, get that done, get that out of the way, all the big discussions, especially the ones that a lot of the public is going to have a lot of interest in. If we get to have that the very first item, if it takes a little bit longer, it may take a little bit longer, but at least then those items are being discussed when we actually have, hopefully, people in the room that know and hear what's going on and some of the things being discussed. We can then move on to some of the other things. It may make some of our visitors stay a little bit longer, but then hopefully they're a little bit more informed about what's going on in the district at the same time also. Other than that, that's it. Thank you very much.
All right, I don't know much other than just, thank you very much for all the work and that you're doing every day, and for staying late with us tonight. And that's it for me. Mr. Gallagher?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Just a comment. First, thank you to the board for your dedication, commitment. Appreciate you every meeting and just the time you put in the district. Also, thank you to our executive team for your work and staying late. We appreciate you and our principals for recognizing our students and just the great things happening. The only thing additional would be tomorrow night is our third annual spring art show right here at Zeller's from 5 to 7 p.m. So we hope to see everyone out tomorrow night to see the amazing artwork that we have displayed in the hall, and just lots of great talent here. We're proud to show it off.
All right. With all that said, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any opposed? All those in favor? All right. Adjourn at 9:02 p.m.
Oh, back.
No,
902.